Welcome everyone to our summer advisory council meeting, and thank you for joining us here today. I really truly appreciate your time. It's a busy time of the season, and with things happening across the province, I really appreciate everyone taking a little bit of time to join us here today. So I'll call our meeting to order, and Colin, if you'll help me with calling out individuals for as we just kind of clean up approval of agenda and minutes, and then I'll go roll right into my president's remarks. So the agenda was circulated with your package. So I will ask for approval of the agenda that was sent around to everyone. Should be on the screen. So if I can get someone just to raise their hand or shout out.
See, Chuck Fosse's moved and Christy Lane Carr has seconded.
Perfect. Any questions to that? Okay, hearing none. Are there any opposed to that? Okay, that should be carried then. So the minutes from the last meeting were also included in the package. So I'll ask for approval of the minutes from our last advisory council meeting.
I see Christy Lane Carr has moved
Okay,
and Chuck Fosse has seconded.
perfect. Thank you very much. So are there any questions on the minutes or errors or omissions? Okay, seeing I have not heard any changes, then are there any opposed to moving that motion? All right, that is carried then. So, as I've been driving around the regions here in the province over this growing season, many have suffered flooding, hail damage recently, and definitely thinking of our producers up in the Swan River area where they've had real infrastructure damage, and in the central region as well. Everyone has certainly felt or had the touch of Mother Nature, good or bad, this year. So definitely thinking of everyone out there and what we're dealing with today in the current season. Storms in the June and July have added a lot of difficulty to this year. And of course, with the increased input costs due to supply chain disruptions and also higher fuel prices, additional strain put on producers here in Manitoba. I've just returned from Canadian Federation's summer meeting and FPT roundtable. The federal and provincial territory meeting happened in Halifax the past week. And from the discussions, it's clear that farmers are ready to find areas to collaborate as the sector faces challenges and economic uncertainty, shifting markets, and rising pressures on productivity and sustainability. It was an excellent opportunity to come together with farm leaders, government officials, industry, and elected officials as we gathered to discuss shared priorities heading into the next, as they form the next policy framework. There was a strong commitment across the sector and government to build a productive, resilient, and sustainable future for agriculture. And more importantly, really emphasizing the importance of agriculture as an economic generator and driver here in the province as well as across Canada. We continue to work with the government and partners at the provincial level and the national level to advance Manitoba's priorities for our ag sector. So I'd like to keep my remarks short because we do have a couple guests from Manitoba Crop Insurance joining us later this morning. Really, if anyone on the call has any questions or concerns, and definitely to get a wholesome update on what's happening across the province. So I'll turn it over to Colin now to do the general manager report. So Colin, I'll turn it over to you now.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Jill. Thanks for that update. And so just get the next slide up here so I can. So yeah, as you see, I ran out of space on this slide for some of just kind of trying to put a snapshot of some of the work we've been doing over the summer. Before I get into that, I just want to recognize we do have a few elected officials on the call here. I see MLA Colleen Robbins from Spruce Woods, as well as Trevor King, MLA from Lakeside. So just wanted to recognize that we do have a few elected officials with us here today. So thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to join us. We do appreciate that to both of you. Um, so looking at some of the work again that we've been up to, we do have a new team member who's joined KAP, Jason Boursier. So Jason, we just want to welcome Jason uh, to our team. He is going to be working on the Farm Safe Manitoba program as the program director. So Jason and Morag will be teaming up to expand our farm safety program, and we're really looking forward to that. Jason joins us from the University of Manitoba, where he was at the operations manager with Glenley Research Station there. So lots of experience. Some of you may have met Jason in the past. So we're really excited to have been able to bring him onto the team, and it'll be really good for our farm safety program. So in addition to that, as Jill mentioned, we've seen significant amounts of flooding across the province. So we've been fielding some calls from producers, trying to make sure as Jill mentioned, she's been out sort of checking out some of those spots. I know Jill or Chuck and Shona there were some district meetings we had out in a few areas and been scouting out to see what the conditions are like. Additionally, we've had engagement with MASC. That's part of the reason why I wanted to bring them on today to give an opportunity for them to provide an update as well as for our members to ask them some questions or raise concerns. We've also worked with the AMM, Association of Manitoba Municipalities, and have provided them with some information and resources that they can share with their municipal officials in some of the affected areas. Some of the meetings we've had over the past while, we had met with MASC just to do the sort of annual program review that we do each year. I know that they take time to meet with different commodity groups and producer groups, so that's always a good avenue for us to raise any concerns or ideas around new program opportunities, improvements, what's working, what's not working, etc. Additionally, we had a sit down with Minister Jamie Moses, Minister of Trade and Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation. So there was a trade mission to. Oh, I'm seeing there's an audio issue. Are you still able to hear me, Bill? I see Bill mentioned there's audio issue.
No, I'm good here, Colin.
You're good. Okay, that might be on your end there, Bill. So, Minister Moses, we met with, he took part in a trade mission to Mexico. There's been a few trade missions so far over the summer, as well as there was one to Japan, which I know Manitoba Pork took part in. So we just had a conversation with the minister, met at his office, and talked about sort of some of the takeaways from that meeting. Additionally, we've been working very closely with the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce. This is a relationship that we've really tried to build on and do a lot of work there, supporting some of their events as well. So the economic summit happened in Steinbach, so I attended that as well as a trip to Churchill. So I went to check out the Fort of Churchill on the economic development tour up there, and met with some other businesses as well. There was the minister's dinner we took part in as a sponsor, and then the federal minister of finance, Minister Francois Philippe Champagne, came to Winnipeg, and we had an opportunity to support that event and for the fall economic, sorry, the spring economic update. Jill mentioned the CFA summer meetings. I took part in those with her as well as Kevin Peters from our executive on the board. There was another event happening in Calgary with the Canadian Propane Association. So there was a leadership summit there. I was able to raise the profile of the importance of propane use in agriculture, taking part in a panel discussion there. So that was a good opportunity, part of our partnership with the CPA and Chris Crawford, who is their vice president for the prairies. Additionally, the Winnipeg World Trade Center, Winnipeg, invited KAP to take part in the delegation down to Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. for the Global Business Forum. So that was an opportunity again to talk about some of the work being done in the global trade space. Montana's agriculture director came up, and we had the opportunity to meet with her. So that would be their equivalent of a state secretary for the state of Montana. Had a good discussion about sort of cross-border issues. Again, building those relationships with the U.S. That's really a focus that we've had, especially given some of the recent announcements. And as you'll see, another trip to Washington, Jill took part in with the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Council and some others, and Manitoba Pork, meeting with the United States Trade Representative Office just to talk about the value of Manitoba to the U.S. economy and making sure that we continue to build those relationships and not have disruptions in our trade activity. On the soil health file, some of that work continues. Neil and Olivia from our team are part of the working group that is developing a national soil health strategy with the Soil Conservation Council of Canada. So that's some positive work there being done, making sure the producers' voices are at the table. The High Commissioner of India was in Winnipeg as well. We had a chance to talk about some trade opportunities with India, as well as perhaps what some of the challenges might be. And then a couple things here related to CUSMA. So you may have seen yesterday there was an announcement from the U.S. about, or the day before, about a 50% tariff that's going to be put on certain products. So we're still in the process of going through that and figuring out what that all entails. But ultimately, this is something that we are very concerned about and are continuing to work with national partners with the Canadian Federation of Agriculture and other groups just to make sure that we understand what the impacts of this could be, as well as what the province. Um, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, came and was part of a roundtable with the Winnipeg Chamber that we were fortunate enough to be invited to. So there was a strong focus on agriculture. So some of the grain handlers were there. I was there along with Cam Dahl from Manitoba Pork and fruit and vegetable growers of Canada. So there was a good representation, and again, raising that importance of the value of our integrated trade relationships. And then lastly, on the CUSMA issue, or CUSMA file rather, MP Grant Jackson for Brandon Souris hosted Randy Hoback and Dave Epp, his fellow MPs from Ottawa. They had a roundtable about CUSMA with businesses in the Brandon area. So we met with the Brandon Chamber of Commerce and some other businesses, as well as those three members of Parliament, just to talk about where things are at right now, concerns, different things like that. And I did say lastly, but one more was Alicia from our team did attend the Calgary Stampede. So there was, I believe, there was probably 100 members of Parliament there. So that was a really good opportunity to have that engagement and build those relationships. And I know that she did have some good conversations with quite a few different members. So, Jill, that kind of covers a snapshot of some of the work we've been up to over the summer. I'm sure I missed a few things, but happy to answer any questions if anybody has.
Great. And Colin, if you can kind of watch on your screen, my screen's not big enough to see if participants are putting up your hand, or if you want to just throw something in the chat, kind of monitoring that. I'm taking my video off here offline, but I am on the call. But we'll I just kind of conserving my broadband or Wi-Fi here to make sure I can keep on and not get kicked off. So next is Neil. If you want to continue with the policy update. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill. My name is Neil Van Overloop. I'm the policy manager with KAP. I'm just going to provide you with a brief policy update on some of the things that we've been working on in the last few months. The next policy framework consultations concluded last June, or just a few weeks ago. We provided comments to AFC regarding the consultation. A second round of consultations will occur in the fall, with these consultations focusing on program specifics. The provincial ag ministers met in Halifax last week for their FPT meeting. Prior to this meeting, we sent a joint letter to Manitoba's Ag Minister about the next policy framework statement. 17 commodity groups from Manitoba signed on to this letter. Our comments focused on competitiveness, resiliency, and research and innovation. The Halifax statement was released during the FPT meeting last week. The priorities include competitiveness. Here, the focus is on building up domestic capacity, productivity, and profitability. Trade, the focus here is on creating new opportunities and enhancing current relationships. Resiliency, the focus here is on improved adaptation to disruption and risks. And finally, research and innovation, the need for strategic investment as well as coordinated action. A few months ago, the Standing Committee on Finance held consultations on the upcoming 2026 budget. We provided comments, a submission to the committee. We focused on BRM programming, farm inputs, labor, animal disease preparedness, infrastructure, as well as regulatory modernization. Transport Canada has a consultation on ways to improve the economy through trade and transportation. Transport Canada's consultation focuses on port governance, collaboration, trade corridors, digitalization, as well as red tape reduction. In the consultation document, they list improving grain transportation as a priority, but they did not specify what policies they're looking at changing in this area. Recently, the Pesticide Regulatory Directorate announced changes to its drone spraying policy. Now, farmers can use drones to apply pesticides in Canada. During this consultation, we provided feedback to the PRD about the number of operators as well as drone use requirements. Every few years, the federal government releases a revised sustainability development strategy. This strategy focuses on three aspects of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental. Our recommendations talked about increased collaboration, strategy clarity, adequate resources, as well as continuous improvement. A few months ago, the leader of Manitoba's official opposition sent KAP a letter asking us for our opinion on ways to improve Manitoba. These questions were very broad and touched on many different areas such as affordability, Manitoba hydro, taxation, loans, healthcare, as well as immigration. Recently, the Department of Infrastructure sent a letter to farmers informing them of changes regarding a safety fitness certificate. If farmers wish to carry loads across provincial boundaries, a safety fitness certificate is required. The department has provided farmers with a fee exemption, meaning that they don't have to pay the 1 year registration fee, which would have been $200. After 1 year, farmers will be required to pay this $200 fee. We've been advocating to the department that they should follow the Saskatchewan model, which has the safety fitness certificate free for farmers, as well as no expiry date. Another topic that we've been working on includes mandatory entry-level training for Class 1 licenses. There did exist funding under the Canada Manitoba Job Grant this job grant, this grant has been replaced with the Building Up Manitoba program. The new program does not cover funding for MELT, but shortly after um, this program was announced, the province announced a workforce tariff response program that may provide up to 100% funding for MELT. We did inform farmers of this news through social media, and we encourage farmers to apply for this grant uh, as soon as possible since funding is limited. Drainage is another issue that we've been working on. We launched a survey asking farmers about their views on water infrastructure throughout the province. We've received many responses. A number of issues have been repeating, such as the limited maintenance on water infrastructure, a long approval process for water licensing applications. There's not a whole lot of clarity around jurisdictional use, as well as challenges associated with wetland rules. We're going to summarize our findings, then present them to government in the form of recommendations. Some other work that we've been engaged on involves Efficiency Manitoba. We have a seat on the Energy Efficiency Advisory Group. They've been working on the 2027-2030 efficiency plan. We've provided comments to the organization about their plan. Another topic includes BRM programming. We're working with CCGA, Alberta Grains, and Sask Wheat about the role private insurance can play with BRM programming. All these submissions, these letters, will be posted on our website if you would like to see in more detail some of the things that we've been working on. I'm happy to answer any questions, but yeah, that's it from the policy.
Thanks, Neil. And I'm watching just for if anybody puts a question up in the chat, but certainly if you want to raise your hand, staff is watching the attendees to see if there's any questions. So are there any questions from the group? Just as an additional comment on the specifically on the drainage, I've also been involved with the Canadian Water Agency held a roundtable as well in Halifax, which I was a part of. So bringing again Manitoba perspective on drainage water management across Canada and specifically from a Manitoba view, and also involved with what formerly was the Lake Winnipeg Foundation has been another board has been formed reporting to Minister Moyes on certainly what's happening with Lake Winnipeg. So happy to be a part of that discussion, as well as Shannon Pisiak as well is on it, and also a representative from Manitoba Pork. So certainly strong ag voices around that table, and as to the impact held by producers on. So important to be there. So are there any questions from the group?
I'm not seeing any yet in here, Jill. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Oh, I do
Okay.
see one. I see Bill's iPhone. If you could just let us know maybe your name and district there, Bill. I think he's on mute. I see his hand's raised, but still on mute.
Bill, if you're having some technical difficulties, maybe if you can throw your question up in the chat, we can circle back to it. Colin, is that a good way to kind of proceed?
Oh, yeah, he's put his hand down, so perhaps it was.
Oh, did he? Okay. Certainly, if you have a question, Bill, if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, or certainly just reach out to myself or someone from the staff after the meeting, that'd be great. I think actually we're a little ahead on time, but we do have representatives from Manitoba Crop Insurance from Mask. We have Jared Monroe as well as David Van Dyne, both on the call, as well as I see a few other familiar names on the call from the department. Gentlemen, if you're on, I'll hand it over to you for your presentation.
Good, thank you, Jill. We'll just try to get set up here.
I see you have power in town. Just must be south of town.
Yeah, we did. I will say we did lose. I think we're operating on our backup internet because, much like some of the irrigation systems in the area, someone decided to steal the copper out of the fiber box in the corner of the building here. So, dealing with that a little bit right now. Just going to try to get us into. Okay, how does that look for everyone? Somebody give me a heads up that that looks okay?
Yeah, Jared, we can see your screen. We'll see the full screen. But just before we go back to you, Jill, there was one question that was put in the chat. So I'm not sure if you'd like to. It was just a
Oh,
question around
yeah,
progress from
yeah,
Bill, about cattail removal and any progress on the maintenance issues that would have been discussed at the district meeting. If I recall correctly, Bill, perhaps, yeah, Jill, I'll let you answer that, or Neil could answer that. I'll let
yeah.
you.
I hate to just punt that off to staff, but I know that they were and are meeting with AMM with some of the maintenance concerns, as well as I know one of the other resolutions was in regards to species of uh, forages and grass put into some of these drainages. So maybe I'll just pass it to you, Colin, because we are working on it, but I was not at attendance or at that meeting, but maybe you just want to update from that aspect where we're at on that.
Yeah, so we're like I say, like Jill mentioned, we're engaged with AMM, also Manitoba municipal administrators. We're looking at doing a few different things around. So some of these issues have kind of been bucketed together because a lot of them are dealing with the drainage infrastructure issues. I know that one was specific to the district. Neil, do you have some context around the specifics on the cattail that challenge? Because like Jill mentioned, there's a few different facets that we're dealing with right now with some of the similar same stakeholders.
Yeah, that's something farmers brought up many times in the survey, that we have regulations that make it very difficult to alter wetlands, including wetlands and drains and ditches. So when water flows, it just stalls when it hits cattails. Um, so when you have these wetlands forming, um, maintenance doesn't happen because they can't remove that wetland from the ditch. So this is what we're uh, this is what we're working on when we provide these recommendations to government, is to say we need something that works for farmers, that involves maintaining the ditches so that water doesn't back up and flood farmland.
So yeah, we did do a survey with producers, and we're compiling that into a report that will be shared. We've also met with environment and climate change, as well as we've met with agriculture to sort of start the process of figuring this issue out. So the wheels are in motion. We've engaged with government and the appropriate departments, and we're getting sort of broader producer, um, broader producer perspective. So that's where that's at, Bill. And if there's further follow up on that, you can feel free to give me a call, or Jill a call, and we can chat with you further. But does that work for a good update for now? I can see you. Thumbs up. Thanks. Okay, beautiful. Thanks. All right.
Okay, Jarrett.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Good. Well, thanks very much for the invitation to join you today. I am joined by David Van Dynes, our Chief Product Officer. David's responsibilities include claim services, our data analytics group, as well, which is the group that calculates your premium rates and your coverage and all those sorts of things, as well as our product development group that is always looking for new ideas to make sure that our programs and products are keeping up with the needs of producers. So we'll be sort of tag teaming the presentation today. But what we're really hoping to do today is to just remind everyone a little bit about what agri-insurance is here to do and some of the components of the agri-insurance program as well. Talk about sort of the year, the season to date from MASC's perspective, and be able to answer any questions that producers have to help navigate some of the challenges that have been experienced this year. So it's definitely been a unique year, one that I've kind of characterized as a season of localized extremes. And so the picture on the right-hand side of your slide is some satellite imagery that we obtained west of, you can see the corner of, or the west side of the town of Stonewall, and then in all of the blue water inundation that followed the June 9th rain event there. And so we've had a number of these different scenarios in different parts of the province that have experienced sort of the high level of rainfall in a very short amount of time, flooding in other areas. And so it's been definitely challenging for producers that have been in those areas. Of course, when you look at sort of the season as a whole, it was cool in pretty well the whole province early on in the season, which delayed seeding in some areas. Some areas, again, were impacted by excess moisture, and so seeding was a little bit later than normal. As I mentioned, overland flooding in a couple of areas in the parkland and the South Interlake. And then more recently, we've had a number of storms that have had brought with them damaging hail, high winds, and even some confirmed tornadoes. So MASC is the administrator of Manitoba's Agri Insurance Program, and our job is really to support producers impacted by these weather-related production challenges. And so I've kind of broken down our role and response into four different sections. The first is really guiding producers. We have staff, we have a team of staff at all of our 12 service centers that are ready and trained up to help serve producers in this time. So those staff resources include the client service representative that help kind of navigate and triage those situations. We've got office administrators that help make sure that all of the, seeded acreage report information is into the system, help register claims and move them along. We also have insurance specialists who help navigate some of those more difficult situations with producers. And then also our adjusting team are part of those service centers as well. And so they're, really there to answer any questions. They're available by phone, they're available by email, they're available by chat, or in person in each of those 12 locations. The second component is really about mobilizing our adjusting staff. We have approximately 130 adjusters that work for MASC on a casual basis, on an as-needed basis. They are one of the big sort of, I'll say, challenges, or one of the things that we try to do is move adjusters to where the need is greatest. Obviously, right now we do have a number of different needs across the province, and so we're trying to make sure that we're prioritizing those claims and getting people out to where they need to be as quickly as possible. And we're dealing with, both sort of acres that have been drowned out and hail at the same time, which I'll speak more of later in the presentation. Overall, the program Agri Insurance is really designed to protect farm viability. The goal of the program is to help stabilize income and maintain financial resilience of farm operations when natural hazards reduce crop production and quality. And so the goal overall of the program is to help producers make sure that, they have the financial wherewithal to put in a crop again next year. MASC plays a role in coordinating with government more broadly. Agri insurance is a federal provincial program, and so we're in constant communications with our colleagues both at the federal Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, as well as the Manitoba Government Department of Agriculture. And so the information and data that we have flows back and forth and helps government to inform their broader planning activities. So at this point, that's sort of the high-level introduction. I'm going to pass it over to David, and he's going to walk through some of the more specific details about agri insurance over the next few slides.
Perfect, Jared. So I think what we wanted to do was show a little bit about the types of claims that we would expect in a year like this when, excess moisture has hit some areas like it has. So really there's four primary types of claims that we'll kind of walk through here over the next few slides. And we'll do it sort of in a sequence of time of year, I would suggest. So the first one we call the excess moisture insurance claim, and it's really a too wet to seed claim. So if that excess moisture happened throughout the spring season and we got to June 20th and that land was continuously too wet to seed, up to that point, a farmer might be eligible for an excess moisture insurance claim. And so we obviously have that data now, and Jared will talk more about those numbers here coming up, but it's really about too wet to seed. That second claim type that we've, for the most part already dealt with are what we call the reseed benefit. And that's where a farmer was able to put a crop in the ground and then that crop was impacted again. This year, the context is mostly around too much water, excess moisture, rain, flooding, that sort of thing. And in order to qualify for a reseed benefit, they need to put another crop in the ground to sort of try again. So that first crop went in, something affected it to the point where it was no longer a viable crop. And if they're able to plant a second crop prior to June 20th, then they would be eligible for a 25% reseed benefit, provided that second crop is a crop they selected for insurance and it meets the seeding deadlines and that sort of thing. The one that maybe many farmers don't understand quite as well or know as much about is our stage one claims, and they go hand in hand with the reseed benefit that I already talked about. In a lot of ways, it's the same claim that gets registered, but there is potential for additional coverage for that early loss. And that would happen in a situation where, for example, farmer's first crop in the ground is canola. That canola is affected, doesn't come up, or gets wiped out by flood. And then they, rather than reseed back to canola, they might choose a different crop like wheat, barley, oats, whatever it might be. And because that canola crop is no longer there and it's not returned to canola, there is potential for a stage one claim on those acres. It's up to 50% of their coverage. Again, if they have other acres of canola that weren't affected early, it works into the mix of what a potential claim might be later on that season, typically into the fall. So it's not an automatic payment for those spot loss acres like the reseed benefit is, but it can potentially improve the amount or increase the amount of coverage that they have going forward for, in my example, that canola claim into the fall. And the fourth claim that really is going to drive sort of the end results of how MASC's year goes and why we don't have great indemnity estimates yet and that sort of thing for at this time of year is what we call our stage two claims. So that's anytime after June 20th. Really the recognition there is you have a crop loss that you can't really deal with until after June 20th. Which is, in our minds and in Manitoba, too late to really establish a new crop. So it's likely to be your last crop in the ground that you could expect to have, I'll call sort of a normal harvest. So we try and determine what that yield is. And that could involve MASC doing an in-field appraisal to assess how much crop is there, or more often than not, it's after harvest, we're going out to measure bins to figure out what the total yield was on that particular crop. So I'll go through a little bit of each one in slightly more detail. Again, if we start with our excess moisture insurance claim, just a reminder that this is included for every agri insurance holder. policyholder. So there's no choice to deselect this from a farmer's perspective. If they have an agri-insurance contract with MASC, they have excess moisture insurance coverage. It's an automatic. And the minimum selection or the minimum amount of coverage that a farmer will have is $75 an acre. They are able to select higher coverage. There's a $100 option and a $125 option. So farmers can make that choice. That choice needs to be made by November 30th of the year prior that we're going into. So there's no choice to do that sort of mid-season or as they see the season unfold. That had to be done the fall before. So on a farm perspective, sometimes there's some small potholes that, there's 10 acres or so that they need at least 10 acres before they can qualify for an excess moisture insurance claim. And there is a deductible in that system as well. So they need to have more than 5% of their acres affected. If there's less than 5% of their acres unseeded, they're not eligible for a claim at all. So. Moving into the reseed and stage 1 claims. Again, we talked about the reseed at 25% of the original crops per acre coverage. So that's what the indemnity level is for putting that new crop into the ground. So we would have an adjuster typically go and check that field, make sure that, yeah, in fact, there isn't much of a crop there, and they would qualify for a reseed benefit, assuming the farmer is able to reseed those acres and put a new crop in the ground. They would get that reseed benefit. The stage 1 is slightly more complicated, although it applies to the same field in question. So again, it covers that early season loss, and there's up to 50% coverage on those affected acres. And really that coverage, I'll say hold it in the bank until we determine the yield of the rest of the acres of that particular crop. And it could potentially increase the fall payout, if I could say that, if they have more acres. Now, if it happens to be all of their crop acres are affected and the farmer reseeds all of those acres to a different crop, then we would finalize a stage 1 claim, roughly this time of year. And a producer could get, roughly that 50% coverage for those acres that they have reseeded to a different crop, if it is in fact entire acres of that crop. So again, not necessarily a part that all farmers understand, but it is a recognition that, the original crop failed. You are putting a new crop in the ground probably later than you would have liked. So some additional compensation to sort of represent that, later season, seeding of a new crop, that sort of thing. So the next one again is going to be what we think will be most of the claims that we end up with, and it is most of the claims we have in a traditional year as well. And this is the claims that occur after June 20th. So it's that sort of last crop in the ground. Producers would typically still take them to harvest. And even in this case where they are flood affected, maybe those acres are too wet to deal with or do anything with prior to June 20th anyway. So that sort of automatically takes them into a stage 2 claim because we can't even assess the loss until after June 20th. So, but it is a case where we do look at all of the acres of that particular crop to determine if they're in a claim position or not. So if a farmer has a small percentage of their acres that are completely wiped out due to flood, typically we would wait until all of the acres are finally determined, which usually means harvested, before a payment is made. Now we'll talk in a few minutes about, maybe some room for MASC to do something slightly different around that, given some areas are severely impacted and that sort of thing. But typically this is what we would call a post-harvest claim in most cases. And it's really a look at what the coverage is that we offer, and we look at how much the producer harvested. So measure their bins, look at their sales tickets. We would include any acres that we appraise that the farmer either destroyed or put to an alternate use, put all that together to figure out if farmers eligible for an indemnity. So to try and drive that point home a little bit more, we put together a few examples of what that would typically look like. So the first example we'll talk about is a producer with a relatively small number of acres impacted by flooding. So in this example, we have a farmer with 500 acres of canola. and we have given them 14,000 bushels of coverage on those 500 acres. The farmer has 50 acres that are severely damaged by flooding. There's no crop at all on those 50 acres. So again, from our perspective, we need to wait to see how the other 450 acres make out before any potential payment might be considered for the 50 acres damage. So if we play the scenario out in this example, the 50 acres are wiped out. There's zero potential there. MASC is aware of that. They have another 150 acres that was not a wipeout, not necessarily the crop that they were hoping for, but not a wipeout. So in this example, 150 acres, you're yielding 24 bushels an acre at harvest time, which would result in 3,600 bushels from those 150 acres. And lastly, they had 300 acres that was a quite decent crop at 38 bushels an acre, and that produced 11,400 bushels. So if we add up the entire amount of bushels from their canola crop, 0 bushels an acre on the 50 acres, 3,600 bushels on 150, and 11,400 on 300 acres. They have 15,000 bushels of production. They only had 14,000 bushels of coverage, so they are over their coverage. In that situation, they're not in a claim position. Again, despite having 50 acres that are entirely wiped out, from our point of view, the remaining 450 acres were good enough to sort of compensate for the 50 acres that were wiped out and resulted in no claim at all in this situation. The second example we'll go through is kind of the other end of the spectrum. So again, that same producer, 500 acres of canola with 14,000 bushels of coverage. They have 400 acres, so a significant portion of their farm severely impacted by flooding. So they file a stage 2 claim and they ultimately destroy those acres. So MASC has gone out to look at those 400 acres and we said, yeah, there's zero potential here. There's a zero yield on 400 acres, but the farmer still has 100 acres remaining, and that actually ended up yielding quite well, 38 bushels an acre. So again, 3,800 bushels. If you do that math, 14,000 bushels of coverage, 3,800 bushels of production harvested on all 500 acres, resulted in a significant claim. This is the type of situation where I mentioned earlier, if a farmer's aware, and this is sort of how it looks on a farmer's particular area or their particular crop, this is where MASC would consider doing something that we don't do in a lot of years, a lot of situations, but when it becomes, I'll say, painfully obvious that the producer is going to be below their overall coverage, MASC is certainly willing and would like to work out with the producer, a partial payment much earlier than they might have expected otherwise. Again, normally we would wait until after harvest before we would finalize any claim payments. I would suggest in certain areas of the province that have been severely impacted by flooding, if we have farmers in sort of this extreme situation where the majority of their acres are impacted, MASC is quite willing to look at this and say, maybe we can make a partial payment. We're definitely not going to know in this example if those last 100 acres that still look decent, if they're going to be 38 bushels, 50 bushels, 20 bushels an acre. But it's pretty obvious, given that there's 400 acres in this situation at zero, that there's going to be a claim of some sort. So MASC would be willing to make a partial payment and then finalize that claim later in the fall when the 100 acres that was still viable is harvested ultimately, and then we can finalize the claim at that time. So if you're speaking to farmers, if there's farmers on the call and you see yourself fitting into a situation similar to this, I'd encourage you to call your local MASC office and see if there's some room for us to make a partial payment much earlier in the season here. And I think the last situation that we thought it was important to talk about today is, again, a producer with 500 acres, this time of a cereal crop, and we've picked oats, it doesn't really matter, but a cereal crop. And in this case, the farmer has 47,500 bushels of total coverage on their 500 acres of oats. 150 acres have significant damage from excess moisture, so they file a stage 2 claim. This time production falls short of coverage and results in a payable claim. So that 150 acres, 50 acres of it we saw at 0 bushels an acre. There's just a complete wipeout. 100 acres of that 150, there was some crop there, and the farmer made the decision to put those oats to feed. So they decided to bale it rather than to keep it for harvesting as grain or for combining. So again, the the point I want to really drive home here is if that's the mindset for the producer, it's really important that they contact MASC so that we can assess those acres before they put them to an alternate use. Again, it's entirely the producer's decision how they want to deal with that crop, but MASC needs to have a look at the yield potential of those, in this case 150 acres, prior to the farmer destroying them or putting them to an alternate use, because there are some negative implications to putting crop to an alternate use without contacting MASC. When we come into the fall and we see some acres that were in fact not combined but were baled, without knowing what that yield potential was going to be on those acres that were not combined, there's essentially what we call an uninsured cause of loss, or a bit of a penalty from a farmer's perspective in not contacting MASC. So that could impact the dollar value of that claim potential. So again, the message is, if you're going to do anything other than combine your crop or harvest it for grain, contact MASC prior to taking any action on those fields. So again, in this case, with contact MASC and 150 acres of lower yielding oats, it resulted in a roughly $30,000 claim for this producer. And maybe the last thing that I'll talk a little bit about are MASC hail claims. So again, MASC offers hail insurance. It's available only to producers that have an agri insurance contract already. And they can choose between $200, $300, and $400 of coverage. Our hail insurance that we offer is really very similar, not a lot different at all than what you can get from private hail insurance as well. We're in direct competition there. And so our adjusters will appraise losses where they can. They may defer early season claims. Again, something like canola that gets damaged early in the season through that flowering stage. We often take a step back and say, yeah, there's obviously damage here. We need to come back to see if or how well that crop is recovering, because it's not always perfectly clear at different stages for some crops of what that recovery is going to look like. Even though we offer hail insurance, it is completely separate from agri insurance. So if you get an indemnity through our hail insurance program, that's not going to change in any way what the indemnity looks like from an agri insurance claim. So that sort of thing. One of the benefits of buying hail insurance from MASC is if you have a hail claim with MASC and we find out that, or we learn that you have about a 50% loss, for example, we will actually help compensate your future coverage. We will sort of bump up your future coverage to account for that hail loss, so that the hail claim itself or the hail damage doesn't negatively impact your future coverage. And we do that for most of our crops, what we call IPI crops, or individual productivity index crops. Doesn't carry through with absolutely all crops. Crops like grain, corn, and soybeans don't benefit from that adjustment from hail losses, but most of our crops do. Canola and the cereals and that sort of thing certainly do. So hail's pretty straightforward. When we have a percent of crop damage, our adjuster will say, yeah, there's 20% hail loss here, and you've selected $400 of coverage. It's pretty straight math. 20% times $400, it's $80 an acre is what the indemnity is. So relatively straightforward from that perspective. Maybe the last point I'll make is we've been quite busy with our hail claims this year. For this time of year, our hail claim numbers are certainly up. We've got about a whole season worth of hail claims already here in mid-July, with quite a bit of time left to go. So we've been quite busy at it. We found that there, again, a number of farmers who are registering claims across all their acres with the hope or expectation that MASC will inspect all acres and I'll say go looking for hail. And we're finding in a number of situations that we're spending time looking at fields where there's been no hail activity at all. And what that does at the end of the day is it really consumes a lot of our adjusting time, and it delays when our adjusters are able to get to the next farm. So if I could ask that we encourage farmers to have a look at their fields before calling MASC to register claims, and only end up registering claims on fields where they see some evidence of hail loss. That way we're not spending our time doing those inspections and essentially delaying how quickly we can finalize claims for other farmers. So.
Perfect.
Oh, I just had one quick question, and I'm online now. We have power, so there was a question in the chat in regards to just downgrading of the crop as opposed to the actual production, like the weight, David. So I just didn't know if you wanted to address that.
Sure, that's a fantastic question. So in those examples that I've put through, the way the math worked out, it assumed that the quality of the crop was good quality, I would say. So what happens and you know what? Why don't we even back up a little bit, Jared, if you don't mind, to any of the examples, just to kind of show. So in this case, we made the assumption that the farmer had 15,000 bushels of good quality grain. If the quality was poor, then there would be an adjustment to, in this case, the 15,000 bushels. And the way that works is we'll get a sample from the producer, and let's say this canola graded number 3 Canada canola, and we do some market analysis, and we say that number 3 Canada canola, again, for example, typically in the market will be a 10% discount over our grade guarantee that is number 1 Canada canola. So if we say number 3 is a 10% discount, then we'll actually discount those 15,000 bushels by 10%. So maybe I'm not smart enough to do quick math, but that would trigger, in this case, would trigger a claim because that would drop us slightly below that 14,000 bushel coverage that we have. So that's how the quality adjustment works. We do that market analysis to find out what the market difference is between the grade guarantee that we offer and the quality that the producer grew in that particular year, and we essentially make that adjustment percentage wise to the actual bushels produced. So does that track, Jill? Did that answer the
Yeah,
question?
and just to go one step further, David, so is it then still up to the producer to sell the saleable grain? So if they're able, is there any linkage to that and down the road if they kept it and sold it for a higher price, or
Right.
once the claim has been settled and they're able to maybe get a better value somewhere else, um, just to carry it just one step further?
Sure. Sure. That's a great question and comment. So when our adjusters go to the farm, we're going to ask to see sales receipts for any grain that's already sold. And we'd ask the farmer to supply that to us. And if it's already sold and it's sold at a number 1, that's what we will use for the claim calculation. If it's not sold, we will grab a sample from the bin. And if our analysis says this grain is number 3, that's what we'll use to finalize the claim. And we don't go back to the farm to double check if our number 3 was accurate. We grab that number 3, we finalize the claim accordingly, and we don't go back and check. Now, that's sort of the way it works in the farmer's favor. If we went to that farm and we grabbed a sample and we said, hey, all of your grain is number 1, that's what our sample results show, but the farmer tries to take it to market and they're unable to get a number 1 for it, they're only able to get a number 3 for it, the farmer can come back to us once that grain is all sold and say, hey, I know you guys thought it was a number 1, but look at my sales receipts, it's actually a number 3, can you please adjust my claim? And we're happy to do that. We will do that. So it's
Okay.
kind of a one-way street, I'll call it. To the farmer's benefit, if he's able to sell it for better than we thought it was going to be, gets to keep that, and we're none the wiser. If the farmer's unable to sell it for what we thought it was and has to sell it at a lower grade, they can come back to us and we'll straighten that out.
Okay, yeah, because we had another producer asks who's doing the grading, so that kind of covers that off. It's still at the end of the day, the benefit is still gonna come back to the producer.
Yeah.
But do
So,
you do
so
your
we
own grading, or is it?
So we hire a company to do the grading, and they grade according to the Canadian Grain Commission standards. It's not the Canadian Grain Commission doing it, but they're following those standards to come up with a grade or quality. So
Great, thanks.
yep.
I see, Shannon, you've got your hand up as well.
Thank you. I'm just going to see if I can, lower my hand. I have 2 questions. So first of all, comment on the alternate use. And we've been there and taken a crop off for bales, for silage, just because it was going to freeze. So my question is, and didn't report it to MASC until after. And so they looked at, it was difficult for them to determine, rightfully so, what the value of that crop would have been because they didn't have a chance to see it. So I guess my question related to that is, how much advance do you need to come out and do an inspection? If forecast changes and frost is coming and it looks like oats is going to freeze, I'd rather cut it, bale it, silage it, than waste it. So just and sometimes forecast changes within days, certainly within hours. But so that's my first question. The second one relates to the excess moisture and the deductible. I've contacted a couple of people in our district, and I'm thinking that we may put a resolution in just related to deductible and excess moisture. And my thought relates to situations where there are municipalities that experience flooding, in many cases have a state of local emergency because of flooding in the spring. And I'm just pulling up my document here where I've drafted my notes. So, and what happens is that they're unable to seed some of the acres because of flooding, not because, and sorry, excuse me. I know the deductibles in place to ensure program fairness and discourage claims for naturally unmanageable low-lying or flood-prone terrain. And I took that off the website. However, in years of flood events, the acres that are impacted are not naturally unmanageable low-lying flood-prone terrain or historically wet. So, or unseatable in almost all weather conditions. So I guess the request of the resolution that I'm putting together is that in a scenario where there is a flood event in an area and a producer is unable to seed some of those acres, that in that case, perhaps if those acres were historically not unseatable, then, and we do have history, of course, then the deductible be waived. And I think that that's a reasonable request, but I just wanted to put that forth and see what your comments were related to that.
All right, well, I'll start, Jared, and you can jump in at any point if that's all right. Thank you, Shannon. So I think we'll start with your first question was around notice for, change of intentions or putting a crop, baling a crop rather than taking it to harvest. And although it's not in our contract, I believe we're hoping for 3 days of notice, if I could say that. I think typically we feel like we can get to a farm with 3 days of notice, so that would be I'd say ideal. In any event, it's the farmer's responsibility to make sure that they don't go ahead and take that crop to an alternate use without having seen MASC in the first place, or MASC seen those acres. If for whatever reason we can't get there and you need to go ahead, I think that's fine. What we ask farmers to do is leave some strips for us to see at a later date, and those strips, again, according to our contract, is a 10-foot strip, the entire length of the field, one for every 40 acres that you're putting to an alternate use. So we hope, ideally we could get there before we'd be into a strip situation, because leaving strips is not ideal for farmers or MASC. But as a last resort, if you really need to go and MASC hasn't been there, that is something that might be possible for you.
Thank you for that info.
Okay, and then secondly, on the EMI deductible, so again, not sure exactly how to answer that question. I don't know that we've thought our way through that yet. Certainly our program is designed and approved by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada with the expectation that the deductible does go up after a claim year. So our premium rates follow a process to be actuarially sound with that with that knowledge in mind that deductibles go up after claim years. So I don't know if I can answer that question right off the top. For sure, it'd be something that we'd have to consider. It's not something that I'm aware of us doing for any reason before. Again, when programming is established and cost shared by two levels of government, there's obviously some impacts more than just MASC to consider. So I don't know exactly how that would turn out, and maybe Jared has a different approach or thought.
Yeah, it's certainly something we could look at. I know we are restricted by those guidelines that David mentioned. We're not allowed to offer a deductible that's any less than the long-term loss rate for that particular product. But we're always looking for new ideas to address some of the gaps. So something we could certainly look at.
Thank you.
Hello, just give me a
Great, good
second.
questions.
Um,
Jill, I do see a couple other hands.
Yeah, there's two. I have Conrad North
yeah,
first,
thanks. Um,
and then Chuck after that.
did you
Thanks,
just send me
Conrad.
a
Go ahead.
message too?
Maybe I'll just, if you wouldn't mind, if I've got 3 or 4 slides left that I can just
Okay,
breeze through,
I
and then
I
we can go
saw
through
it
them.
across my screen and then it
And
disappeared,
David's
so I'm
got his mic
not
on
sure
live, I
where it
think.
went, but
Oh,
that's okay.
David, can you mute your mic? Sorry.
Um, I guess, oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you gentlemen just finish up
Sure.
your slides, and then
I guess the
we'll
reason I
go to the
called was,
questions.
Yeah. David, you've got
and
your mic on. I
what's
don't know if you can hear
the
me.
vice president's first name? Gerbitz?
Oh, Emily,
There,
if you're on the call, or
Jessica.
Olivia, can you mute David?
I don't suspect you. They were going.
There we go. Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that.
Hey, not
Okay,
a problem.
okay.
So the remaining slides that we have just kind of give some perspective of the level of damage that we're seeing this year. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but claim by claim, our excess moisture insurance claims, we have 512 claims registered, covering about 160,000 acres. These dots on the screen represent each of our service centers. The bigger the dot, the larger the claim numbers in those areas. And so you can see the higher concentration in the Swan River, Dauphin, and Arborg service centers. We're expecting to pay about $11 million under the excess moisture insurance program this year. 4.7 million paid out of as of last week. I know that today is check run day, and so we've got another at least $1 million queued up to go out this week, and trying to resolve as many of those claims as we can by the end of July. The second is sort of our combination of stage 1 and 2 claims that David mentioned earlier. Right now, we're dealing with about 1,200 claims. There is somewhere around 210,000 acres that have been reported to us as claim acres that have identified excess moisture or flooding as the cause of loss. I will caution that this is an imprecise number for a couple of reasons. One is that producers aren't required to let us know about these acres unless they plan on doing something with it. And we also, on the other end of the spectrum, have folks that have registered claims, but in the time that has passed between registering a claim and now, the crop may have recovered, they may have changed their plans in terms of what they're doing with it, and so it gives us a broad indication of the impact, but I will caution again that it is a bit imprecise. You can see that we had, you can see the spikes there in terms of when we're getting calls, and much of it following the early June rainstorms that we did have. In terms of hail, David mentioned a busy year. We've got 900 claims on the books so far, covering about 350,000 acres. So up a little bit from compared to the 5-year average at this time of year. Again, you can see when we had those really hot conditions in early July that resulted in some storms that caused significant damage, and you can see the concentration of that damage really in the southwest corner of the province. I know lots of times, we sometimes get the question of, well, does MASC have money to pay for this? And so I just want to kind of go over that very briefly. Our funds are the result of producers, Government of Canada, and the province of Manitoba all contributing to premium rates. Any excess premiums are put into the reserves, and that money is invested, and the interest that's earned off of those investments go back into the fund. And so that really helps ensure that we have cash available to be able to pay out in situations where there are high claim years. This is just a graph of the last few years. You can see in the dark green the amount of premium that's been collected. In the light green is the total indemnities that have been paid. So in most years in the last number of years, we've collected more premium than what we have paid out, which has resulted in that yellow line, which is our fund balance, increasing to a little bit over $1 billion. That's not including the premium income that will come in for the 2026 crop year. So quite a good balance in reserve there. We also do have reinsurance as well as participate in a federal provincial deficit financing program if we were ever to run out of cash on hand to be able to pay claims. So no concern at all in terms of being able to pay out claims this year. Lastly, I just want to talk about some of the technology we're trying to use. Much like many of your farm operations, we're trying to make sure that the technology we're using is keeping up with what's available, and so we're using drones and remote sensing to help speed up the adjusting process. The screen on the right is a snapshot from our Planet Labs pilot that we're doing on soil moisture content right now, which is really was designed, I would say, to measure drought conditions affecting forage production. But we've also found that it's been, at least on a surface level, quite useful for excess moisture as well. You can see up in the Swan River Valley how that's a dark green color, which on the legend is a very excess soil moisture condition scenario. And the bottom part of that screen shows the daily or near daily satellite readings for soil moisture content, and you can see how that spiked up on a couple of occasions where there has been those flooding and or excess moisture events. We're also using technology from a business side on the MyMASC online portal. So that is available for producers to access to register hail claims, enroll in direct deposit, which gets money in your hands a few days earlier than us sending out a check in the mail. So that can all be done at the convenience of your home and even in hours where we're not open. So just to close things off, just want to say again and reiterate that we are here to support Manitoba producers, um, clients. I would say again, just to reiterate the message that David had. If you plan on doing anything with an insured crop, whether that's tilling it up, spraying the weeds, planting a new crop, you need to make sure that you contact MASC, and so we can do that assessment prior to those operations happening. We are, as David mentioned again, trying to find ways to get money out the door quicker. So if producers are in that situation where they have a large component of their land base that's been impacted by flooding, please contact our offices and we will try to deal with that quickly. And then finally, to Shannon's point earlier, we're always looking to identify gaps in the programming and looking for ways to improve them. And so we are gathering that feedback as we go. So that is it for our formal slides. And then I think we can go back to the questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Jarrett and David. I'll quickly go back to one of the questions that was in the chat that I addressed, downgrade of grain and sample. And I think Scott answered some additional in context of on the weight side as well. So just based on in that situation, weight and the grade would be in comparison and compared to market factors. So I think from what I've understood, again, it's going to be back to a positive impact on the producer, if I'm understanding that comment correctly. I forgot to mention the weight implication in that case on the oats, which would have a big impact too on the production. So now I have Conrad Narth that's on, and then Chuck. So go ahead, Conrad, you had a question?
Great. Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. So for those who don't know who I am, I'm Conrad Narth, the MLA for La Vérendrye. So representing the southeast corner of the province, as well as filling the role of the critic for agriculture for the opposition. So I'm also a producer myself. And as a result, get a number of questions both from constituents and concerned Manitoba agriculture producers. on a variety of different topics. But the one that's been highlighted probably the most this spring and into the growing season has been comments that have been made by the premier, as well as the province through Manitoba Infrastructure on flooding, localized flooding. Municipalities declaring a state of emergency, what qualifies for DFA claims and what doesn't, and the concern that farmers and crop loss is largely left out. Farmers are, bringing forward the concern that they can have a driveway that qualifies for a DFA claim that's damaged from localized flooding as a result of sometimes neglect of provincial infrastructure, but yet the crop that was beside that driveway doesn't qualify for anything additional to the current insurance structure that you've very clearly outlined. So, first question would be: is MASC having any discussion? I've passed along these concerns to the Department of Agriculture as well as the minister, expressing the concerns of Manitoba producers, but wondering if MASC is having any of these discussions to include these types of one-of events for additional coverage. And I don't know, I have three kind of questions. You want me to go through them and then answer them? So yeah, the first one is specific coverage for localized flooding that coincides with DFA coverage. And then another concern that's been brought up over the last few years to me is the design, the structure and design of the crop insurance system in Manitoba, as farms are becoming more spread out, larger in size. The whole farm coverage system, definitely we can see how it made clear sense when every farmer was farming the 640 acres around his farm yard. And, if there was a hail event, there was a hail event, right? It affected his whole farm. If there was a flood, it affected him on the whole thing. If there was a successful bumper crop, it affected his whole farm. Now farmers are farming land across, sometimes 50, 60 miles of coverage. Area in one corner where they farm is vastly different from the other corner where they farm. So they're seeing that, you might have a good crop in one area that they farm the land, and they can have a complete crop loss in another. And the system hasn't really been changed. But what a lot of them are seeing, and I'm getting the calls from farmers that are saying they're forced to self-insure and not take crop insurance because the only thing that they're doing is driving down their average to a point where it doesn't really make sense to carry the premium. So that's a concern that I keep getting time and time again. I've passed it along to the minister as well, wondering if MASC is looking at any revamp of the structure of coverage itself. And then the third thing is labor challenges, as we see that there's labor challenges definitely in the agriculture sector in general, but across all sectors. Is this something that MASC with crop adjusters is also seeing? I know my father-in-law, after he retired from farming, he went on to serve 12 years as a crop adjuster, and there were many others like him. That is becoming more and more of a scarcity now. And as it's becoming more and more competitive in the industry to compete with the private sector, for agronomists, and fewer and fewer retired farmers are looking for part-time work. Is that a challenge, and is that a growing challenge, and how is MASC and the provincial government looking to address it? So it's kind of those 3 questions. I don't mean to take up too much time, but it's a great opportunity to have the chance to ask those questions. So it's the DFA kind of specific, localized coverage, then the program design, and then the labor challenges.
Perfect. Thank you very much for those questions, and I will try to address all of them. In terms of the DFA question, of course, DFA is available for uninsurable losses. And so, in the crop situation, we believe that there is insurable options for almost all crops now. We have insured, I think the number is over 70 crops. Participation is strong in the annual crop insurance program with over 90%. I think last year we were around the 91% mark of annual crop acres being insured. Forage is still a challenge. I would say we're probably more in the quarter of acres of perennial forages being covered. So any sort of discussion around additional coverage would be outside of MASC for that in terms of being outside of the program parameters that we have to work with. Which kind of relates, I think, to your second question. And, we hear, I would say, the same comments from producers. There are some producers that are all operating, not just on a vast spread, but also in, I'll say, multiple locations within the province. Under the Federal Farm Income Protection Act and the Canada Production Insurance Regulations, we need to treat a farm enterprise as one unit. And under those regulations, if we were to split those apart, that would be considered risk splitting. And so there's some premium cost sharing implications with that approach. So those are kind of the limitations that we have to work with, but I think we've identified that addressing the needs of larger farmers is a priority and something that we need to take a hard look at. And so we're starting to have some of those conversations now. One of the things that we do offer that I think is suitable for large producers is a product called Crop Coverage Plus. It's a whole farm insurance product, but because of the diversity of crops that are being grown, there tends to be higher coverage, so up to 90% coverage, as well as a much reduced premium that helps provide sort of a baseline coverage for producers. And the third thing around labor challenges, I would say yes, we've certainly seen a shift in the types of employees that we have as adjusters. When I started my career, many of the adjusters were exactly like you said, people that had retired from farming. We're finding that that's less of the case now. And so we've had to be, I would say, a bit creative in thinking about who we hire as adjusters. We have, I will say, though, had a lot of success with hiring young women that are trying to balance, family life and raising children and having, casual employment opportunities where there's some flexibility with MASC has been very attractive. And so that's been, I would say, part of our success over the last little while and something that we're continuing to build on. But in terms of resources, we feel like we've got, we're operating with about the same adjusting resources as we always have.
Great. Thanks. And thanks for the questions, Conrad. So Chuck, I'll hand it over to you. You have a quick question?
Yeah, hopefully it's quick. Anyways, thank you very much, Jared and David, for your presentation. I had two questions, but you kind of answered one of them already. So the question I was going to ask is, can you remind me what the rules are on for producers who reseed canola by broadcasting or by aerial application? I do have a few neighbors in my area who had canola fields that either had drowned out or weren't seeded, and then they tried to seed it with a drone. Can you just remind me exactly what the rules are on those types of seeding operations?
Oh, I feel like David can give you a more accurate and correct answer than I can on that one.
All right. Well, I'll give it a try. And if any other MASC staff see I'm going astray, they can let me know. But really, from our perspective, it's about the incorporation, and we don't want situations where it's so wet that the only way to get onto that land is by airplane, because then we have concerns about seed to soil contact and that sort of thing. So a real key for us is whether or not that seed gets to be incorporated into the soil and by mechanical means. So at least harrow it at a minimum. And if we feel that a farmer is able to harrow that broadcast seeded canola, then I think we have no issues with coverage, and we're off and running. If they're not able to harrow it into the soil, then there's a potential there that they won't have coverage going forward. So that's a pretty key part of the puzzle from our perspective.
Yeah,
Great.
I thought that's basically what the rules were. And I was going to ask you about how your reserves and reinsurance kind of buffers our premiums whenever you have a disaster year, like what we see in some parts of the province. But I think you answered that question already. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for the questions, Chuck. Just going through all of the participants here to see if there's any other questions. I don't see any hands up or other questions in the chat. So yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. And certainly if there's any questions from producers, feel free to either contact, as Dave and Jared both mentioned, your local out of the 12 areas of representatives that are available. And if not, certainly reach out to the KAP office and we can connect you or do our best to help you out with any question that you have. But thank you again, everyone, for participating.
Thank you very much.
Great. So I guess on that note, we did not receive any resolutions from the districts at this time. This is the time that we have set aside for actual resolutions. So I'm just going to kind of survey if there's any additional questions at this point in time. If there isn't, what I will do at this time is forward on or go on to the next item that's on our agenda for cross-provincial update. And instead of going through all of the districts, if I can get individuals just to put up their hand, if there's certainly anything from your districts, questions, concerns as to the season, please feel free to put up your hand at this time, and I'll pause just to kind of review, or you can shout out if there's any comments from the different areas of the province. Just looking at the list that we have here. Certainly, I got David Rourke first, if you want to start us off here, and then we can maybe give some time for people to put up their hands and for any comments. David, go ahead. Do you want to, you have your hand up, David. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, that would make it better. I'm not sure if anybody else is here from District 1, but I can give a bit of an idea what's happening. We've had dust storms and flooding and hail and gophers and not sure what else. Roads somewhat washed out. Some hail 100%, some mostly probably none. We've personally had to reseed some soybeans. They just at the wrong stage when they got hit by hail, and some canola. But the rest of the crop looks really fantastic. A lot of fungicides have been applied this year. Crop stays wet right through the whole day for the most part. But saying that, I have a saying that we're always 3 weeks away from a drought and one rain away from a flood, and some of the ground is drying out, and we'll need a rain in the next couple of weeks again to keep that high yield potential going. Thanks.
Great. Everyone seems to be bashful here, so I'll call out some names. James, you're on the call from Swan River area. Do you have any other additional comments from up in District 12?
Really no additional. I think it's obvious from that map that we're experiencing lots of moisture. There's extensive damage to the land. There's erosion from overland flooding. I think that'll be the biggest thing because we haven't seen that for a long time. The extra rain for the crops that were established, they're doing well. So there will be definitely claims that will be coming MASC's way for sure.
Thanks very much for that, James.
Thanks to MASC for the help.
Great. Thank you. Shannon, up in the Interlake, any additional comments from your district?
Certainly, the district varies from north to south, and southern part of our district has been impacted by those huge rains earlier last month. And so they have lots of acres that were flooded. Some are still flooded. However, some of the crops responded better than they anticipated once some of the waters receded a bit. In our area here, Arborg Fish Branch, we were impacted certainly with unseeded acres this spring because we were flooding in our area, more so towards Fisher Branch. So there certainly are some claims in with MASC related to that. The crops that did get seeded are looking, and I don't want to jinx it, are looking pretty, they're looking all right. And that's what I'm going to say. They're looking all right. So we have been very fortunate in the northern part of our area, the northeast part, not to experience all of the heavy rain that the southern part and the northwest part of our interlake has seen. So that's my update.
Great. Thanks, Shannon, for that. Chuck, I know you were out in the Verdon area for District 7. Was there any comments? I know there was just the one producer that was there, but was there any comments that you heard from that area?
Well, in talking to the one producer that came to the meeting, and I talked to a couple others on the phone, certainly District 7, from what I could see from traveling around and in talking to these producers, most of the impact on the crops seems to be excess moisture, not overland flooding. A lot of the fields look really good. It's mainly in the low-lying areas around sloughs or like areas that are poorly drained, which seem to be along provincial highways in many cases. That's the places where you're going to see the greatest amount of damage. But overall, most of the guys seem to think that crops are good. I know the Wawanesa area got hit hard with some hail. Their crops were looking really good, and then the hail came along. So they're very thankful for the fact that there are options like hail insurance and crop insurance to help deal with these types of disasters or issues that we have in growing crops in where the weather is very unpredictable and can change so quickly from time to time. So I'll leave that for District 7. Like I think that covers District 7 pretty good.
Great. And I know Craig Finney from District 6 is on the call. Was there anything, I know that we met in our district, if you wanted to comment on anything in the District 6 area, Craig, if you're still on the call? You have to unmute yourself. Okay. We did meet in District 6 the beginning of the week, and I think again, variable in the district. We do cover the northeast or the southeast corner of the Lake Manitoba, where we're hit with some of that real heavy rains, and so definitely some additional excess moisture and stress on the crop after seeding, and subsequently, I think the impact of the Assiniboine River and drainage getting into the river had an impact in some cases on getting the crop seeded. I think fortunate kind of in that the south of Portage la Prairie area, south towards St. Claude area, the crops are looking pretty good in that area. in that they didn't get the huge amount of rain, nor did they. I should touch some wood as far as not impacted with hail, but like a number of people have mentioned, we're a long way from getting the crop in the bin, and as David and Jared both alluded to, hail claims are significantly higher this year, and we've got a lot of season to go through. So hoping that Mother Nature kind of helps us out here for the rest of the season, so that the crops that are growing will have a good chance to get in the bin. So we do have Christy Lane. If did you want to mention anything from Dairy Farmers of Manitoba? Just kind of putting you on the spot. I don't see any other commodity groups with their names beside it that are members, but if you just wanted to maybe comment.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Jill. Yeah, for dairy farmers, obviously with the growing season, we're dealing with, what everybody else is dealing with. The windows for making feed have been a little bit short this year, so that's been a challenge. Um, a lot of people do make silage, so that actually shortens your window instead of making dry hay, so that has helped a little bit. But yeah, we're not going to have a shortage of feed this year, that's for sure. The issue is actually going to be the quality at the end of the day. So, yeah, first cut, there's decent amounts, but the quality is not, not as good. But we're hoping now with second cut, as things get warmer, the quality is going to be there for our second cut. In terms of other issues that we're looking at, obviously the recent announcements by President Trump are somewhat concerning for us. So that is something that we are, keeping an eye on as the situation changes on a daily basis. That's, yeah, something that definitely it's being looked at closely by us as well as Dairy Farmers of Canada, which is handling the trade issues. So that's pretty much it for us.
Great. Thanks, Christy Lane, for that. And then lastly, is it Bill? I have Bill's iPhone on here, so I'm wondering, is that Bill McVicker from District 4 on the call?
That's
Is
that's
there?
that's right, Jill.
Hi, Bill. How are you? If you have any comments from your area, great.
Good. Yeah. No, it's the northern part of the district is had some excessive moisture early on. The south part looks not too bad, but no, the question I was alluding to about well, there's a different one in regarding hail insurance. We had some pretty aggressive hail early on, and even up to baseball size, but the crop stands were not drastically reduced, and the crop looks good now. But very quickly, the we were, of course, we think about insuring after you have hail, and we're not habitual hail insurance users, but the private insurance companies. Three out of four providers wouldn't look at us anymore when we've damage, even though the stand is significant. So that was, I'm not sure if anybody has an answer to that one.
I still see David on the call, and maybe Jarrett. Did you want to comment on that and producers' ability to take additional or even get insurance that don't have the continual insurance?
Yeah, I can kick that off just briefly. That is one of the key differences between hail insurance provided by MASC and the private sector. The private sector will manage their liability through only, selling to maximum levels in each township, and that can change throughout the year. Whereas MASC doesn't limit liability whatsoever. So producers can continue to purchase hail insurance up to that $400 per acre level throughout the season.
Good. That's great to hear. So Bill, it's that there's their answer. So if you want some additional information, contact your MASC representative kind of in your area for sure, if
Thanks.
that helps.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up the cross province discussion at this point in time. Certainly, if there's any association members that are on the call, if there's additional comments or concerns that you'd like to bring up, please feel free to send a note to the KAP office or give them a call, and we can certainly provide that context. And have that discussion. And then if there's any questions, we can certainly try to help answer some of your questions. So at this time, we have some time for any other business or questions. At this time, I'm just going through the participants list here. I've got David Rourke. Your hand is up. Is that did you have an additional comment or question?
Yeah, I did for Jarrett. In the case of Bill McVicker, where they've already had hail, how does crop insurance account for that potential loss? That doesn't seem. It seems like it's a factor that needs to be accounted for.
I don't see Jared joining here again, so
No.
I'll maybe take a stab at that. So yeah, we'd have a process where before we would take on, that field in question, we would actually send an adjuster firstly and assess how much loss happened before insurance was in place. And so that if you had any future loss, we weren't then paying for that original hailstorm, because if you didn't have coverage on that first hailstorm, we wouldn't want to pay for loss when you didn't have that coverage. So we would go and look at that crop potential and the amount of damage that happened prior to coverage being in effect before allowing coverage to happen. So
Perfect.
does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for that, David. And thanks for the question, David. So I am looking to see if there's any additional questions from the group. I know we have some additional time here, but I'd be happy to give some extra time to people for the rest of their day today. And I'd like to thank everyone again for attending today's advisory council meeting. And once again, I apologize for I guess my connection at the beginning of the meeting. Uh, Quickly, David, did you have another question or?
Yeah, I just wanted to do some self promotion. I have a tour on July 29th, soil health, bugs in a jug. Um, zero-till dry beans and delayed germination seed technology. And then that starts at 2 o'clock. MBFI has a tour in the morning. At 4 o'clock, we'll have a bit of a discussion period. And then at 5, we'll have a roundtable headed off by Scott Day on terms of what farmers are anticipating or needing next. So if anybody wants to join us, that would be great.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks very much for that, David. I know that this is the time of the season for getting out there and actually seeing what's happening out in our area. So thanks for that. So I guess at this time, I'll ask for someone to move the meeting be adjourned.
Bill's got his hand up, sorry.
Oh, Bill, were you going to move that, or did you have a question here before we adjourn?
I actually did. I put a comment in the chat earlier just to say that is anybody have any knowledge of what the province is intending in terms of maintaining cattail-free waterways?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we did comment on kind of we're in the process of discussing that exact question, and I think it involves at a municipal level as well as the regulations for some of those wetlands that are in some of those drainage areas. So long, complicated discussions that we're having right now, but certainly as we get the information, Bill, we'll certainly share that with certainly after we've had our summary of the survey, as well as discussions that we're having with AMM and our other partners and government. But we'll update the progress on that. But thanks for the question. And lastly, we've got Trevor King, you threw your hand up there, and I don't want to miss addressing you. Or so, if you did, you had a quick comment or question?
Yeah, just a quick question, Jill. Thanks. Just I know they talked their MASC about the uninsurable losses and maybe some DFA assistance there. Do we know any details on that at all?
As to what would be uninsurable, or just details on where they're at as far as application process?
As far as what the compensation is gonna be for those uninsured acres.
Um, for uninsured that wasn't able to have insurance?
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that. I know they mentioned uninsurable losses and the DFA was connected to that. I'm just wondering if there's any details to that.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. I can give you Neil, do you have any other comments on? I know we have some information on DFA, so maybe we can maybe connect offline, Trevor, and we can go over that because it is a process. I know that one of the specifications is also on the other side, business earnings are not insured, that there isn't payment available on those as well. So with ag production having the ability to have insurance, I think it kind of falls out of that scope, but maybe certainly involved in either a agri recovery or agri insurance coverage that agri stability insurance that a producer might have. But we can maybe connect offline, and I can certainly we can talk about that offline if you'd like, Trevor, to give you some more details.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks for attending. And certainly a great group. And so I guess I will ask again for adjournment for the meeting.
Shannon will.
Thank you, Shannon. And a seconder for that?
David Rourke.
Thank you, David. Okay, I'll give you all the rest of your day back, and have a great day. And we will certainly talk soon. Thank you very much for attending.